some truly scary, chilling, and terrifying Reddit horror stories that will leave you questioning reality. These stories are unsettling, eerie, and absolutely mind-blowing. I had a great time picking them out for this video, and I know you'll love them too. So whether you're studying, relaxing, or just in the mood to get scared, this is the perfect video for you. But before we dive into the nightmares, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 10,000 subscribers, and with your support, I know we can get there. 3 Scary True Night Shift. My name is Elena, and I work the closing shift at a small roadside tavern in the quieter part of Willow Creek. It's nothing fancy, just a dimly lit dive bar where the regulars know each other by name, and the old jukebox has been playing the same classic blues for years. Most of our customers are locals, truckers passing through, and the occasional lost traveler looking for a stiff drink. I like it though. The routine is predictable. The tips are surprisingly decent, and over time, I've learned how to handle all kinds of bar patrons. The loudmouths, the loners, the ones who just want to be left alone. Weekdays are slower, but the downside, I work my night shifts alone. No bar back, no extra hands, just me and the occasional fight that breaks out between the wrong kinds of people. That's why, when he walked in that night, I noticed him immediately. It was past 1 a.m. on a Tuesday. The door creaked open, and in stepped a man who looked to be in his late 40s. But unlike the usual rough-looking crowd, he was immaculately dressed, a black turtleneck under a tailored black trench coat. Everything about him screamed money, but the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need to show off. He had flawless posture, an unnerving kind of stillness. And when he finally approached the bar, he didn't hesitate before ordering something top shelf. As I poured his drink, he smiled and asked, "Do you like working here?" A normal enough question. I smiled back and told him I did. He nodded, seeming thoughtful. "Ever thought about doing something bigger?" he asked, and though it was a little strange, it didn't feel creepy, just odd. I gave him the usual polite bartender answer, saying I was happy for now. For some reason, that disappointed him. After a pause, he asked, "What time do you get off?" That question caught me off guard. Until that moment, he hadn't given off any flirty vibes, so I felt a little let down. Just another guy fishing for attention. I gave a vague answer, hoping to brush him off without being rude, and busied myself wiping down the counter. But he didn't push. Instead, he smiled like he already knew the answer, then slid a crisp $100 bill onto the bar, drained his drink, and walked out without another word. It was strange, but I figured that was the last I'd see of him. I was wrong. The woman in red. About a week later, he came back, but this time he wasn't alone. With him was a woman in her mid-30s, someone I'd never seen before. She was overdressed for this place, trendy in a way that felt forced, like she was trying too hard to blend in. Her smile was too wide, too eager, and as they approached the bar, I could tell something about her was off. Before I could even ask what they wanted, she leaned forward, her fingers brushing my arm. "You're so pretty," she said, her smile unwavering. I laughed politely, but the touch lingered a second too long. The man stayed silent, which was odd considering how talkative he had been last time. The woman, on the other hand, kept chatting, asking personal questions in a way that didn't feel casual. How long had I worked here?
How old was I?
Did I like it? I answered as vaguely as possible, but something in my gut told me this wasn't just small talk. Then she leaned in and lowered her voice. "I run an exclusive event club," she whispered. "We're always looking for fun young people. You'd make a killing, $10,000 for a weekend." I forced out a small laugh. "That sounds too good to be true." "It's real," she insisted. "We have lots of girls like you working for us." Her expression never changed, and that's what unsettled me the most. She kept circling back to the job, using the same words, fun, safe, exclusive, before casually saying, "You should step outside for a second. There's someone who can explain it better." My pulse kicked up. I wasn't playing along anymore. I kept my voice firm. "I'm good." And just then, as if on cue, a group of customers walked in, their loud laughter filling the bar. The woman's Expression changed instantly, her friendly mask slipping for just a second. She turned to the man beside her, and without another word, they left. The car? I told my boss and co-workers what had happened. We agreed to keep an eye out if they ever returned. My boss assured me he was only 15 minutes away if I needed him, and the security cameras were usually enough to deter creeps. But a few nights later, after closing, I saw the car. It was parked across the street. Engine off. Headlights dark, just sitting there. I told myself it was nothing. But as I walked to my car, that feeling of being watched crawled over me like static. I kept my head down, gripping my keys like a weapon. When I pulled out of the lot, I checked my mirrors. The car followed. I turned onto a side street. It followed. I took another random turn. Still there. Panic rose in my throat. I forced myself to think. Then, without hesitating, I turned into the parking lot of a police station. The second I did, the car sped off. The final visit. Weeks passed. I thought it was over. Then, one slow night, just before midnight, the door creaked open. It was her. My stomach twisted. I discreetly sent my boss a text, trying to act normal. The woman walked up to the bar, her too-perfect smile fixed in place. "Thought I'd come check on you," she said sweetly. I kept my voice neutral. "We're about to close," she pouted. "Just one drink." I hesitated. If I stalled long enough, my boss would get here. So I started making her drink, pretending to be calm. Then I heard it. The front door clicked shut. I turned. She was gone. I felt a horrible pit in my stomach. I stepped toward the entrance and saw it through the glass. A black van idling just outside. I locked the door immediately. But then, metal rattling at the back door. Someone was trying to get in. My hands shook as I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, gripping a metal shaker like a weapon. My other hand dialed 911. Just as I was debating whether to run or fight, headlights pulled into the lot. My boss. The rattling stopped. The van sped off. The security footage later revealed something far worse than I had imagined. Just before the woman left, the cameras captured two masked figures crouching near the entrance. Another figure was at the back door, pounding his fists, trying to flush me out. The van's license plate was unregistered. The police never found them. And even though I don't work alone anymore, I still wonder, how did they know I was alone that night? And what would have happened if I had stepped outside? I used to work the night shift at a small roadside convenience store called Hunter's Stop. It was on a quiet stretch of highway, just outside of Brookhaven, the kind of place that barely got any business once it got late. Most of my shift was spent restocking shelves, wiping down counters, and occasionally ringing up a trucker or a tired traveler passing through. I say used to because after what happened a few months ago, I'll never work a night shift again. It was a little past 2:30 a.m. and the place was dead. Even the truckers had mostly cleared out. I was bored out of my mind, scrolling through my phone just to kill time. At some point, I stepped outside for some air, rubbing my hands together against the cold. It was one of those nights where the air was thick with moisture, and everything looked hazy under the neon lights. The parking lot was empty, just the pumps, the road, and the dark stretch of trees beyond. That's when I saw him. I hadn't noticed him at first, but out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. There was a guy standing near one of the pumps, half hidden in the shadows. He had the hood of a dark red sweatshirt pulled up, hands stuffed deep in his pockets. There were no cars around. He wasn't fueling up. He wasn't heading toward the store. He was just standing there, half turned toward the glass, watching me. I went back inside, making sure to keep an eye on him through the window. I tried to act casual, hoping maybe he was just waiting for a ride. But something about the way he moved felt wrong. He kept shifting, almost pacing in a weird circular motion, like he was working up the nerve to do something. Then suddenly he made up his mind. He walked to the entrance, slow at first, then all at once pushing the door open and stepping inside. He went straight to the counter but didn't speak right away. He just stared like he was sizing me up. Then in a rushed, almost rehearsed way, he mumbled something about his car breaking down just before the pumps. He said he needed a jump. Or maybe just a little gas. I didn't buy it for a second. His story didn't make sense. And the way he watched me, his eyes scanning my face for a reaction, it felt like a test. I offered to call a tow truck instead. No, he said too quickly, shaking his head. I just need a flashlight. Maybe some help checking under the hood. Something was definitely off. But then he did something that made me question myself. He pointed at the security monitor behind me. I turned and looked at the screen, and to my surprise, there was a car sitting out near the highway entrance. For a split second, I felt bad. Maybe the guy really did need help. And then it hit me. I'd just been outside. That car wasn't there before. A wave of cold dread rolled over me. I glanced back at the monitor, and that's when I saw it, the slightest bit of movement near the back bumper. Someone was crouching just out of view. I forced a smile, pretending I hadn't noticed. "Sure, I'll grab a flashlight," I said, keeping my voice steady. Then I turned slowly, trying not to spook him. The second I was out of his direct sight, I slammed my hand down on the emergency panic button under the counter. The alarm screamed through the store. I braced myself for him to attack. But instead, something even worse happened. His whole demeanor shifted. The fake nervous energy? Gone. The shifting from foot to foot stopped. Instead, his shoulders relaxed. He smiled, not a panicked smile, not an embarrassed one, a slow, knowing grin. Like he had all the time in the world. Like this was amusing to him. And then, without a word, he turned and bolted. I ran to the monitor just in time to see both of them take off, not toward the car, but into the woods behind the station. The car just sat there. Engine off. Headlights off. No one inside. By the time the cops arrived, the scene was exactly as I had seen it. The car was still there, but the men were gone. No footprints. No sign of them anywhere. And then one of the officers pointed out something I hadn't noticed before. The front passenger door was wide open. There had been a third person inside the whole time. The police took my statement, reviewed the surveillance footage, and towed the car. A few days later, they followed up with me. Turns out the vehicle had been reported. Stolen nearly a week earlier, over 100 miles away. No one ever came forward to claim it. No missing person reports. No other crimes connected to it. Just an abandoned car in the middle of nowhere with no explanation. That was months ago, and still nothing. I don't know why convenience stores are such popular targets, but after that night, I swore to myself I would never work another night shift again. This happened a couple of weeks ago. I worked the night shift at Evermart. It's not the worst job in the world, but after a while, it starts to feel like you're just floating through time. The nights blur together, same shelves, same routine, same dull hum of the overhead lights. Hopefully something better comes along soon. I usually stick to the electronics section. It's quieter than the rest of the store. People don't rush in at 2 a.m. for phone chargers and Bluetooth speakers. Most customers are either night owls, killing time, or truckers grabbing last-minute supplies before heading back on the road. That's why I noticed him. At first, I didn't think much of it. Just another guy wandering the aisles, maybe waiting for someone. But after a few minutes, I realized something was off. He wasn't shopping. He wasn't even pretending to. Every time I glanced up, he was nearby, hovering in the next aisle, standing too still by the clearance section. He never picked anything up, never looked at a price tag. He was just watching me. I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe he was just killing time. But he always moved just close enough for me to notice, never approaching, never speaking. It set something deep in my gut on edge. I reached for my radio, thinking about calling someone, but it was dead. Batteries must have died earlier. I debated whether I should go find a manager when suddenly, a hand grabbed my arm. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Before I could react, a woman's voice rang out, loud, friendly, overly familiar. "There you are." I turned, completely thrown off. I had never seen this woman in my life. She was smiling, her grip firm on my arm like we were old friends reuniting. Before I could say anything, she leaned in, her voice dropping to a low whisper. "That guy's been recording you." "Follow me." My stomach dropped. I glanced back. The man was still there. Only now he wasn't even pretending to browse. He was staring right at me. A cold wave of fear crept over me. I didn't question her. I let her pull me away. The way she spoke so loud and casual, like we were two friends catching up, I clung to it. It gave me something to focus on besides the panic crawling up my throat. I was beyond grateful that someone had noticed what was going on and put themselves in an uncomfortable position just to help me. She kept up the act as we moved, rambling about some trip she had taken, or some inside joke we supposedly shared. I barely processed the words. My mind was stuck on him. Had he really been recording me? That was creepy as hell. I wanted to know if he was following us, but I couldn't bring myself to turn around. Not yet. The woman moved fast, steering me through the aisles. I barely noticed where we were going, only that we were going. That the distance between me and that man was growing. At some point, I realized I was kind of expecting her to drop the act, to say, "You're safe now." But she didn't. She just kept pulling me forward. I glanced over my shoulder. To my relief, the man was no longer following us. I exhaled. "I think we're good now," I told her. "Let's go find a manager." She squeezed my arm tighter. No, he's still lurking. Just a little further. That's when I started to feel it, something off. Why was she still pulling me? I twisted my arm slightly to loosen her grip. "You can let go now." She just smiled. Something was wrong with that smile. We had passed the registers, past the self-checkout, past the aisles with the most foot traffic. Ahead was the warehouse section, dimly lit, nearly empty. Beyond that, the side exit, the one without cameras, the one only employees used. That's when it clicked. She wasn't helping me. She was leading me to the exit. I didn't think. I screamed. As loud as I could, I yanked my arm free with all my strength. Her grip slipped just enough for me to break away. I ran. I sprinted toward the front of the store, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. As I fled, she yelled after me, "Wait! Come back!" And then she called my name. My name, the one I never gave her. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I kept running until I spotted one of my coworkers. He was already rushing toward me, probably reacting to my scream.